Hey guys, welcome to the second week of my 100-week art challenge. I'm Michael and I'm sharing my art exercises and explanation here in my videos. This week I completed one personal illustration out of my imagination, a super intricate illustration of a multi-layered cake. Half of the cake represents China, which is where I grew up, and the other half represents the United States, which is where I currently live. It's packed with little details that have personal significance. In the previous week, I completed this intricate illustration merging Chinese ramen noodles with the city of Beijing. It was my first ever illustration piece, and despite it was quite tedious to complete, I was totally hooked. With the momentum, I decided to do another even more detailed illustration for this week, and I am super excited about how it turned out. In order to get the dramatic perspective of the cake accurate, I used SketchUp to build a simple 3D model. I had zero experience with cake making, so it took a bit of trial and error to make each tier the proper diameter and height so that in the camera angle I wanted, every tier and the objects on them would stand out in the silhouette. I also spent some time figuring out the perfect camera angle and field of view so that the cake looks dramatic enough but not too distorted, because distortion would not only make it more difficult for the viewers to quickly understand what's going on, but also difficult for me to draw all of the objects on the cake with the correct perspective. As usual, once the outline of the cake is determined, I started the sketch and completed the majority of line work in Procreate on an iPad. It took me a long time to design the piece, coming up and deciding what to include and where to place them on the cake. The idea of this cake was actually formed gradually in a few days. I first came up with the idea of drawing Donald Trump as a candle, with his blonde hair as the flame and a pair of scissors were about to cut the wick. So it was actually just a simple satirical political illustration. And then I came up with the second idea of doing a big cake to show the differences of China and the United States in my eyes. I lived in both of these countries for a long time, and a cake represents food and a sense of home, and it's also a nice and convenient way to showcase various elements on different tiers. Well, a cake needs candles, so naturally I merged the two ideas together, and this elaborate cake with a Donald Trump candle on top became my final idea for this week's artwork. During making this illustration, I realized that my 30th birthday is coming up in a few weeks, so why not dedicate this giant cake to myself to celebrate this major milestone in my life. With this new realization, I began to personalize the cake, to make it not only show how I see the two countries based on my personal experiences with them, but also include a lot of elements that represent important parts of my life and who I am. For example, the plane represents the American airline flight I took to get to the United States to attend my grad school. That was the first plane ride ever in my life, and it took me right to the other side of the world. I was all by myself, and it was nerve-wracking but super exciting at the same time. When the plane landed and I finally came out of the custom, the August sky of Chicago was so blue I would never forget. On the cake you can find my first car, my degree hats. There are big houses on the bottom tier that represent the traditional American dream, ambulance for my arm fracture, which led to a major surgery and a long steel plate in my arm, my desire to work on feature films and animation one day, my obsession with Chinese noodles, my childhood cat and my current cat. A lot of things can have hidden meaning as well. For example, the 3D glasses not only represent my obsession with IMAX 3D movies, but also represent how I often see certain things through colored lenses with personal bias. The lady with the umbrella on the second tier has a snake body. She is one of the most adored TV characters in China's history. The Madam White Snake, played by Angie Chu, was based on Chinese mythology. She turned into a human from a snake to marry a man who saved her life 1700 years ago. This TV show was made decades ago and had huge influence on many Chinese people of my age, and it's still aired regularly today. On the second and third tier, there are a lot of books forming into stairs, which represent the efforts I took to get my bachelor's and master's degrees in engineering and science. It was many years of hard work. Even though I'm not practicing engineering right now, I will forever be an engineer on some level. All of the training made me into a highly analytical person, and it shows in the way I think and everything I do. However, it's funny that when it comes to art and entrepreneurship, I oftentimes have to let myself be less analytical and more free. It's also worth noting that getting the 2 engineering degrees largely felt pushed by external forces. I explained this in detail on my website. Education to me has always been like video games. Not that it was fun or easy, but it was all about passing another exam and compete with other people. To me, it's also about survival and material and financial stability. Despite my negative opinions of the educational systems, I am glad to say that I played the game well and came out the other end. I can sit here and draw crazy illustrations all day just for myself. That's definitely something to celebrate about. I dedicated a huge side of the cake to spreadsheets. Yes, I love spreadsheets, and seeing the neat cells make me happy. I use spreadsheets to record and organize everything. Spreadsheets are also what I use every day for engineering work, and I decided to put a sad face on it to represent my career struggles and career switch. And the spreadsheets got sucked away by a weird fish that looks like a painting palette, which of course represents my current pursuit of art. I'd also like to point out that I have never been a political person and I was never interested in it. But there are certain things that are just too ridiculous or too directly affecting my life. You just have to get political sometimes. With regard to the current political climate, I drew a bridge on the first tier that connects both countries, and it's a hybrid of the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco and the famous Long Span Bridge in China. It represents the two countries resolving their differences and better communicating with each other. Now let's talk a little bit about the illustration process. After completing the line work on iPad, I moved on to coloring in Photoshop. Similar to my last illustration, I felt like as if I created a huge coloring book project for myself. I spent hours and hours half-spaced out coloring. It was often quite meditative, different from my last illustration, which is super glossy and polished and vibrant. For this one, I chose more muted color palette and used more textured brushes to make it less plastic looking. This illustration took me more than 40 hours to complete, which is why I only worked on this one piece this week. But practice makes perfect. I can already see myself working smarter and faster than my last illustration. One of the biggest challenges for this illustration again is the perspective, especially when it comes to drawing the shadows. I often refer back to my SketchUp 3D models for guidance. Here is the sketch versus the final illustration and the line work. That's it for the second week of my 100-week art challenge. I hope you enjoyed the illustration along with the inspiration and the process I just shared. Please give this video a like and please comment below with any questions, advices, or if you just want to say hi. I'd love to hear from you. If you are interested in seeing future updates of my 100-week art challenge, please hit the subscribe button and check out my other videos as well. Thank you and have a wonderful one. I'll see you next week.